kick off the meeting, I'm going to ask the Director of Business and Culture, Stephen Gillespie, to take us through items 1 and 2 on the agenda. Stephen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So members, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Business and Culture to be held remotely on Tuesday, the 9th of March at 4 p.m. If I take the roll call, firstly, Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Shaw Stephen.
Councillor Michael Cooper.
Shaw Stephen.
Councillor Shauna Cusack.
Here Stephen.
Councillor Emmett Doyle.
Here Stephen.
Councillor Mary Durgan. Councillor Rory Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Here Stephen.
Thank you. Alderman Darren Guy.
Here Stephen.
Councillor Patricia Lowe. Councillor Aileen Mellon.
Shaw Stephen.
Alderman David Ramsey.
Here.
And Alderman Graham Ward.
Here Stephen.
Thank you, members.
Thanks, Stephen. Item 3 on the agenda is the statement of remote meetings. I would like to remind everyone who is in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with Council protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. By participating in this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Next item on the agenda is declarations of members' interests. I'm not sure if anybody has any today. Normally we just say put them in the chat box, but we need to declare them verbally. So if you do have an interest in any item, if you could state that verbally when we reach that item. So today we've got a presentation from Invest NI. We're expecting Invest NI and the Department for the Economy, but the Department for the Economy weren't able to attend today. So I'm going to ask Stephen Gillespie to give us a brief update on that, if you could, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, just to give you a brief update in the department. Previously, Graham Wilkinson had attended on behalf of the Department of the Economy and given us an update on skills. He was kind of nominated by the department to attend, and he felt really there was no further update in terms of the skills that he presented before. And based on members' questions, really it was somebody from the policy side of the Department of the Economy that members would be get most value out of attending. So unfortunately, there was nobody available from that side. So I continued to liaise with the department to get somebody from the policy side of Department for the Economy to present at a later date. And it wasn't that Graham was unwilling to attend. It was just basically that he felt there was nothing more he could add to the previous presentation, and there wouldn't be much value for the committee. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Stephen. So we've got the delegation here from Invest NI to talk about regional balance. So today with us, we've got Alan McKeown, Des Gartland, Anya Mulligan, and I think there might be somebody else that's not on my screen at the minute. So I'll pass it over to Invest NI. There you go, folks.
It's almost been a year of this and I still forget to unmute. Chair, thank you very much for the invite, and thank you to the committee for hearing us today. Delighted to be joined all the way from Chicago, Anya, who is with us in real time. We're going to cover a few issues. We want to cover off where we are with COVID crisis and response. Des is going to talk about what I think is fantastic work that's been done in the last few months since we've last met you on local startup work and kind of just general work with Invest NI within the community and the economic growth area. And then Anya and Elaine Curran, who is with us today, who is our international investment manager. Elaine's going to they're going to do a bit of a double act and take you through some of the work that's being done in market, and particularly around internationalization and some inward investment updates. Can I first of all start off by thanking Stephen and Kevin for the intense work that they've done with Des and his team over the last kind of 3 to 4 months, particularly as we look at responding to the COVID crisis, but also particularly focusing on the startup and the startup ecosystem in the city. It's been a particular concern of ours and of Stephen's to make sure that we are demonstrably doing more. And so we set off on a very detailed path of partnership, and I think that's paid dividends, and Des will say a bit more about that in the next few slides. It has, of course, for all of us been a tremendously busy 12 months. Little did we think that in a week's time we were being told that we were moving in towards a lockdown, and a year later, intermittently, we are still there, albeit we're starting to see some really positive signs in terms of the vaccination programme. It's not really been business as usual, although we've tried to support businesses and tried to support communities, and the work that you have done in your communities has been absolutely fantastic. So in terms of our work, we have tried to weather the immediate getting out of our office accommodation and standing up and remote working remotely, pivoting that within days to make sure that all of our staff were able to work remotely, and we will continue to support our businesses. A major effort was around the immediate response to the crisis and the production of PPE, and indeed our own board member Kieran Kennedy was to the forefront of that and producing significant amounts of PPE for Northern Ireland and beyond to make sure that our hardworking emergency staff could work as safely as possible. And then we've been involved, and I've personally been leading on this for the last year in terms of the crisis response schemes. It's a long year of work, and then in amongst all of that time, we've had to deal with the EU exit and the challenges that that's brought. Can we move to the next slide, please? And then can we maybe just move on to the next one? Sorry, I forgot about the slides. Okay, so in terms of the COVID crisis, we're now on to our kind of fifth scheme, as you can see there, in terms of the types of schemes. The first one, the Micro Business Hardship Fund. It seems like such a long time ago, helping a significant number of companies, a significant value there, £23 million. We've handled in total somewhere in the region of kind of 17,000 to 20,000 applications, processing 21,000 applications, working through those, processed to 14,700 applications. In total, we've distributed £80 million, and by the end of this programme, when we finish with the LCDSS programme, that will be over £100 million of support out to a significant wide range of Northern Ireland businesses, the vast majority of whom have never been through Invest NI's books before, and we've learned an awful lot from that process. At any one time, we've had up to 120 of our staff working full time on these projects. That's been a significant undertaking, and many of whom have worked kind of almost every weekend as well as long hours to get these done. And at the same time, particularly now, we're now launching our recovery programs. We have 8 recovery schemes who have been developed. The Productive Investment Capital Grant has been so popular, we've had to pause that. The budget was being significantly over committed, and we're working through those applications now, and we hope to restart that if we can get additional resources in a later stage. In addition, we've very much heard the needs of our micro and small businesses by reconfiguring our e-commerce grant, and that's a key piece of work that's ongoing just now. So in total for our schemes, we've received over 700 applications, and we've committed nearly £4 million already. So we continue to work on those schemes and to support the economic recovery through that. Can I have the next slide, please? Of course, in addition to that, we've had the EU exit programme, where we stood up a dedicated helpline over Christmas. We have run advice clinics where we've had well over 1,000 attendees. We've had about 700 one-to-one appointments, 13 webinars where we've had 1,500 attendees, and presentations and guidance have had well over 2,500 views, and our total impact has been around 5,700 companies. And we continue to work through the challenges and the opportunities of EU exit. And whilst we've been doing all of that, it's been business as usual in Invest NI. £67 million of assistance has been offered to over 2,000 businesses since April 2020. Over 75% of the businesses we support are outside the Belfast area, and full detail on our performance will be published after our year-end validation date, which will be around early June, and we'll publish that on our investni.com site plus the open data site. We are also turning our attention now to recovery plan as we twin track both continued support through the emergency schemes, our recovery schemes, and also now looking at what our next one-year business plan will be. We only have budget for a one-year business plan, and like every other agency, we're waiting for final approval of our budget, but it will not be. It will be in line with other budgets. It'll be a very tight budget year. So we have 8 key areas: growing external sales, which is our #1 target. We have that deliberately as our #1 target because that's the fastest way to make a positive impact on the economy. Innovation will be key to our partnership moving forward, and I'll say a little bit more about that when I conclude. Commercialization and entrepreneurship, which Des will cover a little bit more around in recent weeks, and the skills agenda is very much one that, as Stephen has talked about, is one in development with the department, but it is one that is a priority for our minister, and one we are supporting both in terms of working with our own companies and also supporting the wider skills needs within our various communities to make sure that we're able to make the opportunity of investment opportunities and create and sustain jobs. Again, investment in the economy is key, and a green economy, very much one of the key drivers is to transform the economy into one which is based on green economic recovery, and we will be kind of looking at that and invest and looking at dedicating specific resources to translating the opportunities, particularly around our renewable energy and our hydrogen energy, into real sustainable opportunities which will bring jobs, and we won't be wanting to talk to Stephen and the team around that. And then to make and compete at Industry 4.0 is critical. Back to the productivity agenda, we know we need to get more productive in Northern Ireland and continue that journey. Some very positive examples, not least Seagate in your area, or Terex, some big employers who are at the forefront of manufacturing excellence. And then levelling up. This is one of the kind of key areas for Invest. It's one that we still need to tease out further at the political level, and particularly probably as we move into the programme for government. But it's one that we are very keen to make inroads into and to have conversations with you and with Stephen and John and Kevin, what makes the biggest impact in levelling up, and within the remit of Invest and the budget we've available, how we make the biggest impact. I think we're on to the next slide. This just highlights some of the kind of key areas in which we will offer support. We've just recently amended that Crescent 4 programme won't be going ahead, and we'll be looking at other options for the private finance world, but it's been a very active world in the last couple of years, so there's a huge amount of positivity in there. Innovation and R&D will be critical, particularly as we exit the current European funding arrangements. It will be important that we have a single voice in Northern Ireland to make sure we maximise the calls for innovation and maximise the opportunities to secure replacement funds. And it's really important that our innovation funds and our ERDF and LED funds, we have a strong and single voice to maximise our opportunity. At this stage, it looks like there is a bidding process to UK government. That might change, but we wait to see, and it's important that Northern Ireland plays its part, and if we're in a competitive bidding exercise, we need to start that work without delay to get a clear policy direction, and also the clear evidence of why we should invest in Northern Ireland, investing in Northern Ireland over other areas of government funding. We'll talk a little bit more about trade, but clearly market visits, inward visits, and selling outside Northern Ireland remains one of our key priorities. And we will talk about that in a minute or two. Skills and competitiveness, I've covered earlier. It's really important that we have the right skill base. Great announcement today with 20 new training places with Fintru, and colleagues in the council and in the college have worked really hard to make that programme as successful as it is, and it's a real example to other areas of Northern Ireland and beyond of how best to link between business and training opportunities. We continue to see huge traffic towards our NI Business Info website and the marketing job that we are doing in terms of COVID recovery and COVID management. And I would want to pay tribute to Des and the team for the fantastic work that they're doing locally. Whenever we look at the results for the year, I know it's going to be a positive set of results from Des and the team, and working with Stephen and Kevin in particular, worked really hard at that partnership level, particularly around the LED work. And we are currently working with all 11 councils on a technology-based LED programme that's going through casework, and we wish that one very well. And again, we continue to work with our property team, an evolving area where without the resources, our role in property is more of an enabling one rather than a buying land and facilitating that, and it's one that we know that there's always a lively debate on. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. At that stage, I'm going to pass over to Des. Des is going to cover the next couple of slides, and then he's going to hand over to Elaine and Anya. Des. You with us, Des?
Sorry, I was mute there. You got me now. So thanks, Alan. Good afternoon, everyone. My part of the presentation here will be to very much focus on the whole levelling up sub-regional area. I'll shortly go into some detail here in terms of the activities we've been doing and will continue to do, particularly in partnership. But I suppose suffice to say to start by saying that, this whole area is a key priority within not just the new jacket, new approach strategy and, the draft programme for government, but it's also a key priority within Invest in I strategy and operating plan, and it is very much a key focus for ourselves. We do have our roadmap in the council area, which is the strategic growth plan that we've all worked on together and we've all signed up to. And the actions are in, I firmly believe as the regional manager for Invest in I will deliver the economic prosperity that we all want to see for the council area over the next 10 to 12 years. And it was particularly pleasing to hear from John last Thursday at the strategic partnership meeting that for the most part, all of the actions within the plan are at least online, if not ahead of schedule. And that really is great to hear as we progress through the plan. And I suppose alongside that last week, the momentous day last Wednesday, whenever the heads of terms was signed for the City Deal projects, because as you all know, those projects are very much ingrained within the key actions of the plan, to deliver the outcomes we all want to see over the period. And then alongside that is the partnership approach, which again, as Alan alluded to, and I will endorse, is exceptionally strong in the council area. And it will become more and more important, obviously, as we progress, through the initial challenges that we do have with COVID, moving through recovery, and then hopefully getting ourselves focused on to normal business activities that, as Alan correctly said there, has still been, even through the challenging times, exceptionally busy year to date. Next slide, please. So again, I just want to touch on a number of areas here. Members, obviously the COVID recovery and rebuild, as Alan outlined, is a is a priority area and will continue to be for the foreseeable. From a regional perspective, and again, this is very much in partnership, not just with council, but also with the universities, the regional colleges, the enterprise agencies, Catalyst, as well as all of the other stakeholders in economic development. My particular focus, has been recently and will begin into the coming months, will be new business startups and new exporters. And if I could start initially with the new business startups, we've done a piece of work with council colleagues to actually map out the provision that's currently there for those interested in starting their own businesses. And I have to say, at first face, the supply base looks really, really strong, but there is evidence to say that it is quite fragmented and very, very difficult for people to access the information that they require quickly. So a piece of work has started there with council colleagues to try and see how we can make that fragmentation, much more efficient in terms of an online platform that can get people the information that they need quickly. And then more importantly, the actual partner to contact to ensure that what is relevant to them now is actually available quickly to them. And I said the supply base is strong, but the fragmentation is an area that does need to be addressed. And we've tried this in November with a boot camp, which again was done in partnership with council colleagues and University of Ulster, and was very much focused at a particular space within startups. It was high potential startups. And we did a very focused marketing comms around the boot camp. And again, it was done in partnership. And for 20 spaces within the boot camp, we actually had 78 applications. While a lot of those applications wouldn't have fitted the criteria, we were really, really pleased just to have that high level of interest. And obviously those who could participate went on to the program, but those who couldn't were signposted onto other support within the supply base. So that gives us enough confidence to say with a more focused drive in this area, we really can increase the demand to the strong supply base that we're currently there, and that work has started and continue. The whole area of new exporters, and again, I touched on this in October. We have 117 key account customers in Derry City and Strabane Council area. So those are customers who we're dealing with on a one-to-one basis to help them grow in export markets. But as regional manager, I want to see that growing. But I need partnership, support to make that happen. And I have to say, as Alan said there's a lot of momentum going on in the background here that gives me confidence that we can increase those numbers. We do need more pull-through from the council local programs. And I have to say, the conversations and work I've been doing with Stephen and Kevin gives me encouragement that we're going to see, more traction in that area. Also more pleasing, in addition to that, is recent conversations I've been having with the president and the chief executive of the Chamber of Commerce. And again, I'm meeting with them tomorrow. And, what I'm trying to do there again is to try and work again with partners to see if we can encourage more and more out of, various different channels. So the Chamber of Commerce, for example, have 360 members. And while some of those are already customers of Invest.NI, quite a number aren't. And, the simple sort of analogy I made to the president and the chief executive, if I can get 5% more pull through from the 360 members they have, that's potentially 20 new customers for Invest.NI that I can work with and my team can work with to bring that 117 figure up to 130, up to 140. And again, similarly alongside the work with the council and their programs, but more widely the work that the enterprise agencies are doing and what Catalyst are doing amongst others. And again, that is going to be a particular focus for me over the coming months. We've said it before and I'll say it again, the vast majority of support that Invest.NI offers is to startup or indigenous businesses in Northern Ireland. You'll hear shortly from our colleagues Anya and Elaine in terms of what's going on in the international markets. But, even looking over the last 5 years, 75 to 80% of our assistance has gone to indigenous businesses. That's my area of responsibility, and that's the area I want to see growing in the council area. But alongside that, obviously, I can't for 1 minute say and undervalue the importance of foreign direct investment. And I have to say the pipeline is strong at the moment, and my colleagues will go into some of that detail shortly. But again, key to all this, in my view, to delivery will be a partnership approach. And again, we'll keep members updated on that as we go forward. I've referenced our Strabane Business Park primarily, well, for two reasons. One, I live in Strabane, so I've got an interest in that. But more importantly, you know, it is a key action within the strategic growth plan in terms of increasing the occupancy in the Strabane Business Park. And even, you know, through the testing times that we're currently going through, I can advise members at this stage that we have 4 inquiries at this stage for the park. And I would say to you, 2 of those inquiries at this stage that I would consider strong inquiries. And while we haven't got them over the line yet, I would be fairly confident that we're going to hear some good news in the coming months around Strabane Business Park. And again, obviously, when the time is right and when the customers agree, obviously, as well, which is very important, I will advise members of the progress there. Referenced earlier the importance of the city deal projects, and obviously the momentous day last week with the heads of terms. There's 3 particular areas that's going to be of main relevance to invest in, and that's the innovation projects of Cedric, Carl, and Thrive. Obviously, the wider regeneration and physical regeneration, you know, within the city area and Strabane town centre are, you know, as equally important. But these areas here are the areas that we believe in investing in. We can bring the most value to fast tracking and delivering these projects through OBC as quickly as possible. We're building a strong team within Investing, a new team within Investing that wasn't there before within the whole area of city deals. And we have expertise in advanced manufacturing. We have expertise in artificial intelligence, and we also have expertise in life and health sciences that we can bring to the table. And, you know, those conversations have started already, and information flow has started. You know, even as yesterday, there was a sizable amount of information flow through to Kevin and his team, and that will continue and obviously fast track even more as we progress through this journey together. Partnership delivery plans, you know, everything I've talked about has been partnership. And, you know, this is happening right across Northern Ireland, not just in Derry City and Strabane. We are in the process of working up 11 partnership plans for each council area. These aren't new plans. What they're trying to do is to join up everything that's already happening out there within the economic strategies, the community plans, in Derry and Strabane's case, the strategic growth plan, and indeed the wider plans that our partners have, to make sure that we have a one document approach to ensure that the partnership plans and the partnership working, more importantly, which is strong at the minute, can be even stronger going forward. And last but not least from me is the whole area of the region sales and value proposition, which again my colleagues will touch on shortly. It's important for us that we get, you know, those reviewed, updated, and fed through us on a regular basis, you know, because the Derry City and Strabane District Council proposition is sold within the Northern Ireland proposition, and we need to ensure that as that value proposition is updated or hopefully strengthened, in most cases will be strengthened, that information flow goes through to our investment colleagues, particularly pertinent at the time now as we move through the whole city deal projects, and obviously those are key catalyst projects for the economic, you know, development, future economic development for the council area, and obviously the strengthening of those propositions. So it's key again in partnership that I can flow that information channel to our colleagues on a regular basis. I hope that's given you a quick overview, an update in terms of my particular areas of focus, but I'll pass you on now to my colleagues Anya and Elaine, who will give you an update on what's happening in international markets. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting us along this afternoon. Delighted to be with you. I'm Elaine Curran, one of the investment managers based here in Belfast, and joined as well by my colleague Anya from Chicago, as we said earlier. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes to sort of give you a little bit of update from the investment side, and also how Anya particularly works in the market selling Northern Ireland. So if I just kick off on the pipeline, and as we've all been talking today, it has been a very different year for us all. It's hard to believe it's a year we've been coming to terms with this way of working, but despite all of the challenges the last 12 months have brought us, we've had a very busy and a very strong pipeline in Invest NI. And we are looking to finish on a very good year with some very good projects, a number of which that have already been announced already. And we've still a few more that we're hoping to also complete before the end of the year. But looking forward into the next year as well, we are very confident as well. We've again a lot of leads and a lot of strong projects that are looking at Northern Ireland. So despite COVID and the challenges we've all had to get used to over the last 12 months, companies are still very interested in Northern Ireland, still very interested in hearing our messages, and obviously know that there's a real talent pool to tap into here, and opportunities for more businesses to stretch right across the province. I'm going to maybe hand over just to Anya now, just to cover off a little bit about sort of that messaging and how we've had to change our approach in the last 12 months. We were all very familiar with having inward visits of companies. I know Stephen and Kevin and Ross have supported us in those in the past, but it's been very much a year of virtual activity with our friends, but also that what has had to happen in the markets themselves. So if I can maybe ask Anya just to cover off a little bit about what we've been doing internationally to keep Northern Ireland at the forefront.
Thanks, Elaine, and hello everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me along to your meeting today. Good morning from Chicago. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I just wanted to give you an insight into how the team at Invest NI works here in market. I myself head up our operations in the Midwest of the US out of Chicago here, and I'm responsible for selling into about 25 states, so almost half of the states of the US. We have a team here of about 25 people. They are based across a number of key cities. So Boston, New York, San Francisco, my team here in Chicago. We also have a presence in Toronto. We have a presence in South America as well. And the team works incredibly, incredibly hard at pushing and promoting the message of and the proposition of Northern Ireland as a whole. It's a team that does a lot of desk-based research, looking for links and looking for hooks with companies that we could potentially reach out and target to. And then myself, who traditionally pre-COVID days would have spent a lot of time traveling to and meeting with companies face to face, getting to know them, getting to learn about them, looking to see what their needs and requirements are and how we can sync that up with what we have to offer back in Northern Ireland again. Obviously, that has changed a lot in the last 12 months, and I haven't been out to meet a company face to face since March of last year. So we've had to get a little bit more creative and innovative in how we develop those relationships with the companies that we're targeting and prospecting. And we've probably worked 100 times harder than we ever have. And I think it's a real credit to our team here in the US that we've still been able to deliver on some fantastic projects and brand new companies that are setting up operations in Northern Ireland, given all the challenges and the obstacles that we have in our way. So we're punching way above our weight. Our team, as I said, works incredibly hard. It's a very, very competitive landscape out here. Not only are we competing against all the other areas in the north and south of Ireland and across the UK, but we're competing against other European locations, South America, Asia. There are probably over 100, I would say, other people doing the exact same job that I'm doing, representing other countries and other cities across the world. So when you see some of those projects that comes into Northern Ireland, we have worked really well and been very, very successful to land those projects. A little bit about the messaging and the information that we use. the council, Derry and Strabane Council, have been fantastic in the past in providing us with the information and the data that these companies are looking for when they're doing their own due diligence and research in Northern Ireland and what we can offer. So having that information up to date, having all that up to date data on skills and salaries and the universities and other businesses that are there, not just other international businesses, but we also look at homegrown Indigenous businesses as well. So we can match that up with the skills that some of these companies need. So having that information is critical. Des alluded to it, having a joined up approach, making sure all our key stakeholders can work together and are happy to deliver together. That gives such comfort and such confidence to the companies that we work with when they see that we're all on the same page and we're all singing the same hymn. So that's a big brownie, a big plus point for us as well. Other bits and pieces, the diaspora is incredibly important to us. We really leverage anybody who's originally from home, who is living and working in the US, or maybe whose parents were originally from home and now, you know, they've started their own families in the US. We leverage that diaspora so much. So one of my asks to you is that if you know anybody who is living and working in the US right now, that you think it may be worthwhile having a conversation with us. They may not directly work in a company or a sector that we're trying to target, but they may be able to open doors or have somebody in their network or somebody else that they know that can help us. We will be more than happy to have a conversation with them, because you would not believe how many doors that can actually open. It's a really good foot up in this actual market to have somebody you know open doors like that. And I'll finish off by saying I have a very vested interest in this myself. I'm from the West, I'm from Tyrone, so I put a good push in making sure that the Northwest and the West is really well represented here. We have a Northern Ireland-wide message when we go out selling, but I have a vested interest myself in making sure we get plenty of projects back to the West and Northwest. So Elaine, over to you to finish up.
Okay, thank you, Anya. And who's just to, you know, highlight sort of the partnership approach that we have as a team based in Northern Ireland and with our colleagues across the States. It's very much Anya and others in the States will sort of very much do that, reach out to the business community, really build that early relationship. And then whenever we have got them, as it was previously, to the point of actually visiting, the team in Belfast and I would work with them, the visitors when they come in. It's been as Anya has said, it's been a much more creative approach of how we've found ways of connecting and getting on calls with these companies at early stages and building those relationships very early on. It is still about the relationship and about how we can both sell Northern Ireland, even virtually. But I think just to add to Anya's comments about what would be great to keep doing, and it certainly is keep doing, is going forward. Inward investment is still, as I said at the beginning, we have a good pipeline. We're very comfortable with what we may have and what we hope to announce next year. But it's about, I think the world is changing in inward investment and how companies are setting up. I think remote working, as we all know, is probably here to stay, and how that blend is going forward. But that, I suppose, means there's opportunities for companies to work across Northern Ireland with different businesses, no matter where they set up. So it opens up that talent pool to everybody. Having that information, and you know, I know just like Anya, we welcome the City deal, the information, the video clips, the media that was created around that is fabulous for us, and something we've already been sharing with our networks as well. So more of that is what we ask for. And it's not just about those inward investment companies. It's important as well that we get those stories about the companies doing well in exports and about starting up, being able to sort of show the region as a hotbed of business and activity that we know it is. But if we can demonstrate that to the inward investors, that really gives them a strong message of how vibrant it is, and that they're joining an ecosystem that is really full of energy and wants to wrap their arms around the business if they land in their region. So I think more of what you have, more of the messaging. You have fabulous collateral at the moment. You have fabulous videos. I think just the catalyst, as we've said, from the City deal heads of terms last week will be a real sort of game changer for us, being able to convey those messages right out across America. So thank you very much for your time, and that's me for today.
Thank you very much, Anya and Elaine. Can we get the kind of penultimate slide, please? Just in closing, again, thank you for inviting us along. I think what you've heard today is an organisation both strategically at that Northern Ireland wide level and very locally through Des and the team, who's working very hard with your council officers and with local stakeholders to understand the kind of modern dynamic, what's happening in a COVID and post-COVID environment, what's happening with those opportunities that exist from New Decade, New Approach, the new programme for government, with a move towards an environment where post-COVID shapes an environment where working closer to home is something that everyone wants to bridge. We've heard a very strong FDI pipeline, and Elaine is working hard to bring those over the line and to have announcements in the next financial year, not the next calendar year. We've heard from Des the work with local stakeholders has made a real difference to the entrepreneurship environment and the ecosystem, and has spawned some new ideas. And working with our board member, Padraig Cameron, working really hard to continue that as a key piece of work as we look to move forward, and a pilot piece of work that we're going to roll out across other areas of Northern Ireland. Des has highlighted the ambition to grow locally and to grow exports locally through working with the Chamber, local businesses, working with the Council, and particularly to onboard more clients into Invest NI, so we can offer more support to more companies in the Northwest. And we have some great examples of people who we've worked with and who are growing as we work their way through their growth. And as we've highlighted today, we are absolutely delighted to see the heads of terms signed in the City deal. Some really, really strong projects in there. And one of the things we want to do with Stephen and the team is to build what I'm calling an innovation partnership. And Stephen will be reaching out with Jeremy Fitch and his team to come up and set up some meetings to begin what is hopefully a journey on innovation and how we get closer to those projects and how we help those projects with the commercialisation angle, which I know is something you're particularly keen to do. So members, we wanted to leave you with the impression that we are working very closely with your officers and indeed with a number of you as elected members. We're hearing the messages that you are giving to us. We are reflecting in those in actions, and we're reflecting in those in actions in real time. There is of course more to do. There will always be more to do, and we will work with you on that journey, and particularly we will work with your Chief Executive and Stephen and Kevin and the team to make sure that the opportunities that are there are not lost on anybody, and we seize those opportunities. There are a number of really strong messages and really strong relationships. So I am very hopeful that we, as the policy agenda develops and as the next programme for government moves forward, that the partnership that we have with you and the partnership that we have with your officers will continue to make sure, as Anya has said, that we continue to push strongly for investment in the Northwest. And we're now happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Alan, Des, Elaine, and Anya. Before I open it up to the floor, I've got a question that I want to ask, and it's a question that was asked this time last year when you were here. So this council area has the highest unemployment in the north. It is the highest economic inactivity in the north. It's got the second lowest wage levels in the north. Our council believes that Invest NI and the Department for the Economy, who I'm really disappointed couldn't be here today, should introduce sub-regional targets to tackle economic issues across our council area and to promote regional balance. Two stats that demonstrate the scale of the problem are as follows. In the last 3 financial years, there have been 687 investor visits in Belfast and 15 in Derry. So for every investor visit in Derry in the last 3 years, there's been 45 visits in Belfast. Last year, between January and September, there were 1,176 jobs announced in Belfast and 29 in Derry. So for every job announced in Derry, there were 40 jobs announced in Belfast. That's not balanced. That is the very definition of imbalance. Obviously, there's external factors. Belfast has 2 universities, it has 2 airports, it's got things called motorways, and the innovation projects in the City Deal package and the strategic growth plan will bear fruit. They will enhance our economic offering, but we need to see a change of approach from InvestNI and from the department about sub-regional balance. Des referred to a number of documents. You've got the draft PFG, you've got the new decade, new approach, which talks about regional balance, but there are no targets anywhere. So my question would be, when can we expect to see sub-regional targets? And my view would be, if there's a target, there'll be a plan, and if there's a plan, there's going to be funding and resources. That's what we need. And I am mindful of InvestNI's current business strategy from 2017 to 2021, where it envisages 30 to 40,000 additional jobs. And without sub-regional targets, those 30 or 40,000 additional jobs could be created in Belfast, and not one in this council area, and that target would still be met. And in my view, that is fundamentally unfair. So where are we with regional targets? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think that's an overarching political question that has to be addressed as part of the programme for government. But what I can stress to you today is that, as you've heard from Elaine and the team, we are focused very heavily on marketing the opportunities that exist in the Northwest. And as Des has highlighted, the strength of the performance this year locally is on a good path, and we will continue to do that. Like every other public agency, we'd love more resources. We have a 1-year budget, and as I talked about earlier, that looks at best to be standstill. And so competing within a kind of wider public sector finance envelope, the more money we can get, then the more we can do with that money. And so even if we have a kind of a standstill budget, it's important that we make the most of what we have. That's why we are so heavily invested in supporting on city and growth deals, why we have been working with Stephen and the team to put our resources directly into the project team to help develop those projects and to provide that strategic support, particularly with the view of commerciality. And I think you are right to point to the opportunities that the investment in the medical school and the investment more generally in education in the Northwest will bring. And that's an area where we need to focus. So I want to focus my attention on the actions that we can do as a set of officers. I'm not a politician, and I think that you have a stronger voice in terms of that at the political level, but you have our commitment that in every opportunity, particularly in the partnership sphere, so we are working very closely with Malachy and with Leo and with John and with Stephen to make sure we maximise the opportunities that the city and growth deal brings, and also the opportunities that are starting to be realised through new decade, new approach. Those are game changers for us in terms of our ability to sell the Northwest and to create those jobs where people can stay closer to home. And in addition to that, one of the things we are moving heavily towards is that whenever there is investment in Northern Ireland, making sure that where there's the agenda of closer to home, that we are either selling all the areas of Northern Ireland and making sure that we're making the opportunities that people can work from home and therefore don't have to travel as frequently, or indeed don't have to travel at all. So that's where my focus is. That's where we are best to deploy our resources at this stage. And I'm sure that you and your colleagues in this committee will take that challenge up around metrics at the political level.
Thanks for that, Alan. So just for the members' benefit, I have a proposal to bring on the chair's business regarding that, because I anticipated that answer, to be honest, Alan. So here, the first indicated speaker is Councillor Cooper. Michael.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to Alan, Des, Elaine and Anya. Des and Alan, you're sick looking at me and I'm sick looking at you. And we've had numerous discussions since you were last on the committee, myself and Martine Anderson in particular. And I'll go on to some of the follow-up on it in a second. Just before I do, in terms of the Department for the Economy and the policy, side of that in particular, the fact that they're not here, I think, speaks volumes. And it also speaks volumes in terms of the Minister's commitment to the Northwest, and it speaks volumes about the lack of a specific sub-regional strategy for the Northwest, whether it's funding or policy-based. We've said it before, and we'll say it again. Even what she said last week around the university and the whole health sciences debacle, or in her view, a debacle of the McGee campus getting health sciences reflected her bias as far as we're concerned. And there will be people here who say, well, it's the whole executive that's responsible for job creation, which is true, which is why the city deal heads of terms being signed last week, and the support from Conor Murphy was key. And also, reference was made to Graham Wilkinson here from DFE around the skills side. We've met Graham separately as well, and myself, Martina, and he's been very amenable, and he's hopefully going to link in with what we're doing with DFC and council around the long-term unemployed and that whole interim labour market. So all departments have a notice here, but when it comes to DFE as a sponsor department, their approach has been diabolical as far as we're concerned. Just complete lack of focus or specific commitment to the Northwest, and I'll happily say that. We've said it again. Hopefully we'll not be saying it again in the future, but for now that's our approach. So in a sense, Alan and Des, I don't blame yourselves. You're doing what you're doing in terms of COVID, obviously, and even with the Brexit situation. You've been dealt a hand the last year, which hasn't been ideal, and the work that you've been doing along with council in terms of helping businesses in that recovery element or that support element has been very, very welcome. I know that from speaking to businesses individually, but it's the recovery side of this now which is key, and that's why, you know, the sub-regional stuff, when it was asked there by Rory, by Councillor Farrell, around the sub-regional, you know, we've met yourself and Patrick and Kieran Kennedy and others on the board, and sub-regional has been mentioning at the start. So I was just, well, sub-regional, that sounds like we're making progress, only to be told that there were sub-regional policies for every part of the 6 counties. Our ask has always been a specific, bespoke, dedicated sub-regional policy for Derry, based on economic and activity, based on historical imbalance in terms of investment in the Northwest, and you know, that still hasn't happened. And under this current minister, again, I'll say it again, we're not surprised. So, and the next Assembly mandate, whatever party takes on DFE, there has to be a complete game changer approach. So we're in the last year of that mandate, and obviously we're coming out of COVID. So what can we achieve in the next year is the key in terms of short term benefits to the city and district. You mentioned the collaboration with council, and obviously myself and Martina have met with yourself and Kevin and Stephen on a number of occasions, and trying to break it down into different segments to try and manage this. And the SME stuff, we've discussed proposals that have been submitted through all our discussions we've had with all our agencies in the city as well, and some of the stuff coming up even at this committee is sort of, you know, tying under that loosely. The idea of signposting in particular SMEs, what support is out there, the fragmentation you mentioned, Des, making sure we get rid of that, so there's one clear platform, one clear message of how SMEs can get support, whether it's financial or otherwise. The follow-up after they get that support is key, and you know, I know from speaking to Kevin that proposals we put on around that have not been taken on board, because it's not within the remit of the council's sort of SME hand-holding. So we're disappointed at that, but we'll come back to you on that privately in due course. But the fact that there's a single message approach being taken, I think is progress. But again, there's much more to do on that. Just on the FDI stuff, and again, as you mentioned, the SME stuff is really the lifeblood, which it is. But the FDI stuff, it's still a massive gap. And the figures speak for themselves. It's as simple as that, because the visits, as has been referred to, are pitiful compared to Belfast. And there are reasons in one sense for that, but I know, dealing with yourselves and council and businesses here over the last decade almost, that this is historically an issue that it's not going away. So if we're getting new pipelines coming out of COVID, you know, because it kept being referenced, new pipelines for the north, I don't want to hear pipelines for the north. Well, we do in one sense. I want to hear pipeline specific visits being organised for Derry and Strabane and Tyrone and Mid-Ulster and all of that as well. But you know, the proof will be in the pudding, and we're not seeing any proof of it yet. And we have to wait and see once we emerge out of this, obviously, this crisis, where we're at. But you know, we remain to be convinced of how successful that's going to be. So we'll see how that develops. Just on the wider stuff around skills and all of that, I mentioned the work council's doing with DFC. And maybe that Graham Wilkinson, people like that, the skills agenda is absolutely key, because especially with City Deal, we have to remodel a lot of the sort of profile of the people graduating here in terms of what the disciplines they're studying. And that's going from MVQs, from level 1s right up to level 4s, not just FE and IE, not just a degree and all of that. It's getting them trained in the right field so that they'll benefit from the City Deal employment that's going to come on stream in the next few years, which gives us hope that we will have progress, we will have better job creation figures, absolutely. But we need to make sure that yourselves are working hand in hand with the other stakeholders in terms of the skills agenda, to make sure we're absolutely focusing on the right qualifications for people, the right background in terms of being able to access those jobs. And myself and Martina are going to pick up with that again in the coming months. But I mean, I could just come on here and say, look, we're fed up to the core. Well, I am. I'm just squandered at this stage, to be honest with you. But I know what I say as well. The blame doesn't lie with yourselves, and ultimately it lies with the department, as far as we're concerned. You can only do what you're directed to do. But in terms of working more with council, more closely, and being amenable to meet with ourselves and discuss proposals, that's all been done, and I'm grateful for it. But we have a long way to go. The City Deal monies will hopefully kickstart things, will give us a completely new profile, and even the things like Grade A, even with homeworking, we have the new development at Ebrington, and other proposals for Grade A in the city, which are being worked on. There will be a point that blended approach is needed, as you said, but there will be people who still need to work within an office environment, and that's where the FDI stuff is so critical. So there's already infrastructure being developed to cater for that. The graduate numbers are hopefully going to go up as McGee starts to expand. All of that's good, but we need a lot more evidence-based stuff here coming back, and this time next year, I think, is key, because COVID, we've all been in the same boats in terms of getting. We've all been stuck in a rut in terms of trying to make progress across all departments in many ways. But now, coming on to the next financial year, as you said, we're hoping for news on new pipelines, FDI-wise. I hope for Derry, and also SME-wise. We need to be making a lot more progress, and that needs to be department-led and resource-led, giving yourselves the opportunity. They have a much better output. So I'll leave it at that. It could go on for a long time, but we'll meet yourselves privately again in the coming weeks, and we'll not be giving this up, obviously, but it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Would anybody from Invest NI like to comment on that?
Just to provide Councillor Cooper with the assurance that we are working across departments, particularly with colleagues in DFC, and Niall Casey is leading on that work for us in terms of the skills. We recognise that the skills agenda is particularly key, and I think one of the strengths that we have in the Northwest is the relationship between the college, the university, the council and ourselves in terms of working with industry around developing programmes that directly support the industry needs, and no more than the Fintrue announcement today. And we will continue to do that, because that's critical to making sure that whenever we are talking to inward investors, that the skills that they need are available for them in the right numbers. And that's one of the particular strengths of that relationship we have with the college, university and the council, and we'll continue to work hard on that.
Thanks for that. I've got a number of indicated speakers, and I see there's 3 Tyrone-based speakers. So in case any of these actually slag me off for just quoting investor visits to Derry or jobs announced in Derry, those are the figures I had. So Councillor Gallagher.
Was that a dig at me? Was it? I chair, when I'm talking today, I'll be talking Derry and Strabane, because that's what this council is, and that's what we were getting a presentation today. Unfortunately, one didn't turn up, the part of the economy, and I'm not surprised. I run and hide under the bed, is what I would suspect it is. But the presentation that I was expecting to get was around redressing the balance between East and West. And I, like yourself, wish to raise a number of indicators across that. And when we talk about employment rates, when we talk about jobs and pay, infrastructure disparities, investment differentials, from yourselves, Invest Northern Ireland, foreign investment and distinctions and living conditions versus East or West. Let me tell you, they're very stark. The employment rate in Derry and Strabane is over 9% less than Belfast, and it's 13% lower than the Northern Ireland average. Now, see, when it comes to pay, if you're doing a job in Derry or Strabane and the average pay is £430 for that exact same job, the exact same job, £567. There's a difference of over £137. £137 a week. See, when you put that into a month, that's £548 that your salary is short in Derry and Strabane on a monthly basis. When we look at the infrastructure, the railway, there are 54 railways in the north. There's 3 in the west. Motorways, 60 miles, slightly more. There's a small stretch that comes into the west. When we look at universities, primarily all the campuses are in the east, all of them. We just seen very recently a shortfall in Belfast of 120 million. At the drop of a hat, they got that shortfall. At the drop of a hat. When we look at investment from Northern Ireland, from yourselves, the east has 3 times more financial investment than the west. The east has had 4 times more jobs than the west. We can look at reports, and these are all on reports. When we look at foreign investment, 741 direct investment visits were made to the north, 2017, 2020. 85% went to Belfast. See, when we look at living conditions, Derry and Strabane comes out consistently one of the worst. And it was the worst in 2017. And that's analysed against good growth indicators such as secure jobs, adequate income levels, good health, time with the family, affordable housing, good quality transport systems, fair distribution of income and wealth. We all come out the worst, time and time again. We can look at all the NISA reports, the labour force surveys, it's all on there. Annual hours and earnings, 2020. This is not, we're not going back years upon years. This is the here and the now. I heard in the presentation about we must speak with a single voice. That single voice has clearly created an imbalance in East and West. Clearly, not me saying it. Research, the evidence is there to say it, and it must be addressed immediately. And presentation that you gave today, and in fairness to it, it was a lot about very, very recent. It hasn't got any targets on it. It hasn't got any finance on it, and it needs to be based and targeted to the West. This presentation was addressing the imbalance. Then we need to see it. We need to see it against targets. If I go to the Craigan in Derry or the Ballycoman in Strabane and tell them they're getting paid £137 short than Belfast, which is a short way up the road, they're saying to me, how come? You are Invest Northern Ireland. You tell me how come? Because I don't see the answers. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. would anybody in Invest NI like to respond to that?
I mean, when I hear those figures, what I hear is ambition for change, and whilst I mean we are not, the policy remit that you cover there is almost every part of the Northern Ireland Executive and many policy areas. So I can't break into those areas. They're not areas of our responsibility. What I can do is I can say to you that we share your ambition for growth, and that the message today is not just do we share that ambition, but here are the key areas that we are deploying resource staff to and working in partnership. And Councillor, your passion for change is undoubted there. We want to work with you. We can't fix all of those problems, and I know you would like us to work with you to do more. And our offer today is to work with you to do more. We can only really do one thing at a time, and we'll work in parallel on a range of those things. But I hope you hear today that from myself and from Des and from Elaine and from Anya and from colleagues in Invest NI that we are working very closely with your officers, with John Kelpie, with Stephen, and with the college and the university to realise the fantastic offering. There has been a significant amount of investment announced and a significant amount of opportunity that will follow that investment. And I can only speak for what we want to do now and into the future. And so I hope you hear that it is our ambition to hook in with that and to make the most of that and to work side by side with those in Derry and Strabane Council and our partners to make the most of those opportunities.
If I could just add to that as well, Paul, that obviously I'm the local guy, and that commitment is even stronger. If it can even be even stronger for me locally in terms of the commitment for the area here, it has to be done in partnership. You look at the key indices that you're talking about there. You know, it's going to take time to turn those. I think the plans are in place to turn them. I think the actions are starting to happen are in place to turn them, but it has to be done in partnership. I need more customers in Derry City and Strabane. I need more poultry from council programs. I need more exporters in the council area. And the more of those businesses that come to me, the more support I can bring them. That'll help create the jobs that we all want to see in the council area. The FDI part is important, no doubt about that whatsoever. But again, right across the north, 80% of our support is still targeted towards Indigenous businesses. They're coming forward looking for our support. I want more businesses in Derry City and Strabane coming forward to my regional office seeking our support. But I understand we have to do that together. We have to do that in partnership. And there are certain areas like the startup area where there's fragmentation. We've recognised that. But that's not just been Invest NI, that's been the council, that's been the university working with us on it. And by doing it together, I think we'll make it not only mend it, but we'll make it better. And I think that's crucial, the partnership stuff going forward. You know, last week, City of Deal announcement, fantastic news for the whole area. It's not going to bring the overnight prosperity that we all want, but it's a huge journey that we're on now. And, you know, every year we want to see those curves turning. You know, to quote John Kelpie, turning the curve for the area. And that's the milestones we all want to see going forward. We want to see reducing unemployment. We want to see better wages. Better wages goes hand in hand with better jobs. So we need better jobs coming into the area. You know, Councillor Cooper, I think, alluded to it. Skills is probably the biggest priority area that we have in the council area, but it's not unique to this council area.
Thanks for that, Des and Alan. So the next indicated speaker is Councillor Durgan. Mary.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try to be brief. I share a lot of the sentiments that have been expressed by previous speakers. We all know the commitments in New Decade New Approach about regional balance are commitments made to address decades of chronic neglect, and that was touched upon by Councillor Gallagher. So this is chronic economic neglect. And as Des says, you know, we have some good news in the city deal, but it's not going to bring about an overnight turnabout in economic prosperity. But those commitments and the New Decade New Approach are meaningless without strategy, and any strategy is meaningless without targets and without planned funding. And I think in terms of the city deal, I think it's important that there's a strategy for capitalising on the opportunity. And we've seen that the health and life sciences is essential to the city deal in Derry. but now we're seeing health and life sciences is featuring in the Belfast City deal. So how can we be assured, or how can we be reassured that our city deal will be fully maximised in terms of opportunity, and that our opportunity in the health and life sciences will be protected and fully promoted? I just have a couple of other brief points. I was glad to hear about the green energy and commitment to renewable energy, but again, we need to see strategy and targets in relation to that. And finally, just in terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol and the dual market access that we're now hearing of, the opportunities that could bring us, I think Infest NI have described our position as a unique position. I would say maybe particularly so for the Northwest region. So what strategy is in place in terms of maximising those opportunities for the dual market access? Thank you.
Thanks
Okay.
for that, Mary. A couple of very good questions there. So, have we any feedback?
Des,
Yeah, I could start maybe with the life and health sciences, Mary. Yes, you're right. You know, Belfast are looking at life and health sciences. You know, they do see that as part of their proposition. But I'm starting to see a proposition in Derry City and Strabane that probably wasn't there before, if truth be known. We've had the Citrix facility since 2006. You know, and initially it was called ABC, if you recall, Academic, Business and Clinician. We've been really successful on the academic and clinician, but maybe not as successful on the business. But I believe firmly, Mary, there was reasons for that. We didn't have the infrastructure that all parts of Northern Ireland had. I'm now starting to see that. We've got the medical school coming in. We've got the life and health sciences courses now from University of Ulster going to McGee. We've got a Thrive project coming through the city deal, which is very much focused on the life and health sciences area. So I can see the whole asset of life sciences starting to come together in Derry and Strabane. And again, as you know, there's plans afoot within Citrix for further expansion there. So the proposition itself is starting to get stronger. But I see our proposition, in addition to selling it internationally, which is obviously what Anya and Elaine will be doing, I see opportunities within entrepreneurship and local startup in terms of that clinical research space. And that, for the very nature of that life and health sciences sector, does by tradition create not only jobs, but better jobs and better paid jobs. And again, go back to Councillor Gallagher's point, that getting that mix of better added value sectors will drive up, you know, the higher median salaries that we all want to see in the council area. So I do see the journey has now started in terms of really strengthening that proposition of life and health sciences in Derry City and Strabane.
Okay, thanks, Des. Just on the dual market access, I mean, Northern Ireland continues to have access to the GB and the EU markets for goods. That access means that we are and can become a gateway for the sale of goods to two of the world's biggest markets. We are the only place where businesses can operate free from customs declarations, rules of origin certificates, and non-tariff barriers on the sale of goods to both GB and the EU. And so that's a unique selling proposition for us in the marketplace. And Elaine and Anya and the teams worldwide are kind of out there clarifying that role, getting that message out to inward investors. And particularly for key industries, as we've talked about, health and life sciences, aerospace, electronics and machinery, chemicals and consumer and agri-food products, all huge markets for us, and particularly in terms of the engineering side. West of the Ban, that's the heart of engineering in Northern Ireland, and so that's key for us. We're continuing to sell, particularly our chief exec and Steve Harper, our international executive director, and his team, of which Elaine and Anya are key members, particularly out there selling across to Northern Ireland. There is a significant degree of interest and we'll continue to sell the hell out of Northern Ireland. To be honest, we will continue to do that, and that includes selling the Northwest. And Des has highlighted a very positive set of changes and future actions, and where we're working with you and your officers. I think Stephen might want to say something around. He's working with my colleague Donald Durkin and making sure that we are supporting the development of the deals, development of the process after heads of terms. And maybe Stephen wants to comment on how positive that's going.
Jerry, happy to come in at that point. I mean, as we discussed privately and publicly, the key in all the research and development projects in the city deal is pathways to employment. If they're just research projects for research sake, then deliver the outcomes that we want. So working with Donald Durkin and his team within Invest NI and making sure that those those journeys are there from the start, and we can get clearly people from research to undergraduates through university and into employment opportunities is key to the success of the deal. So that work has started. That work will be embedded as we develop the OBCs, which is very, very early, and we'll make sure that happens, and will be reported back to this committee on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Stephen, Alan, and Des. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Boyle. Michaela.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to say thanks to the team for the presentation today, to Alan and Des and Elaine and Anya for being here this afternoon, and particularly thanks to Anya for flying the flag for Tyrone and the States, and you're very welcome on the call today from one Tyrone woman to another. I suppose I just want to start on a positive note. In terms of the Fintry announcement today, we'd have to welcome that, and that is good news. And also, I suppose, just obviously the Strabane Business Park, and you did allude to, and that was my question, just about what Invest NI are actively doing in terms of supporting the businesses, obviously, and supporting the demand for business in the park. And it is good to hear that there is potentially 4 with 2 strong possible business startups in there. I mean, we do have 2 already in there, 2 good, strong businesses, and that's very welcoming. And I was just, funny, before I came on the call this afternoon, I was just looking back in notes, going back to 2013 when I was writing to Alistair Hamilton about the business park in another different era. And at that time, the business interest was 6. Unfortunately, we've only 2 at the minute, but they're 2, good businesses and 2 strong possible businesses potentially. So we welcome that news whenever and that investment when it comes around. It is disappointing that DFE haven't come here today in terms of any announcement by government to provide a stimulus package to revive businesses coming out and the economy coming out of COVID. There may be great initiatives and good support for businesses, but I have concerns around banks and banks requiring too much security on loans for businesses, and particularly at this time when businesses are struggling, and the loss of banks locally right across the island of Ireland. So there's issues there in that regard as well. So obviously that's where you play a role in supporting those businesses. I suppose just to also, obviously, and people who come from a rural area will understand this, better connected areas have higher rates of startups, and we do have our barriers in terms of, and others have alluded to here, in terms of transport, barriers to the transport. So when we get our A5, hopefully that will support better competition for businesses to come here and set up businesses here. There is also, strong relationships between rural performance and broadband provision is still a big issue here for us in the Northwest, and particularly in parts of Tyrone. And I know that does impinge a lot in terms of people coming here to develop and have their businesses here. There's a lot of people returning from the States to home to set up businesses here in our rural areas. And I suppose just maybe I don't really have any questions, it's more comments, but you know, what in the way is Invest NI doing for those the diaspora who are looking to return home? And maybe Anya, I don't know, I know you're doing a great job in the States, but what are we doing locally in terms of getting that investment? We talk about outward investment, but inward investment, and getting people to come back here to set up businesses. And I know there has been a few around the Derry area, but to encourage more people maybe in our right across, and particularly in the Northwest, to come home and set up business here. So I just want to say thanks, also a particular thanks to Des. I know your commitment has been, and there has been a positive change. You know, the commitment that you've given to us locally here in the Northwest. I think we'd have turned a curve, but it'll take a few more years before we see the benefits of that curve. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Michaela. Would anybody like to comment on that?
I can maybe start.
Yeah, go ahead, Des. Go ahead.
I was just going to start with some of the local stuff, and obviously Strabane Bark has been on my radar since 2012, and you know, I talk regularly with obviously political representatives in the area, and the key always was to get the first one in, because once you get the first one in, then people are driving past and they see businesses there, and we got Dragon Foods and then we got KES, and I have to say both their factory builds are fantastic. And you're driving past that park and people are looking in, and all of a sudden they're seeing not just a park being utilized, but these really, you know, high-tech buildings. And I did reference the 4 inquiries, and you know, I wouldn't have said 2 were very strong unless I was confident that, you know, we might get something, you know, there in the short term. I don't want to overcommit, obviously, because things can happen, but I do think that there'll be more good news there in the near future. And obviously I'll keep members abreast of that. You mentioned the whole connectivity, Councillor Boyle, and you're absolutely right in terms of the need for more digital connectivity right across. And obviously it was good news to hear today that the Project Strabane announcement, you know, for Mid-Ulster, you know, and that hopefully will you know, fast track right across the province as quickly as possible. And it is targeted, as you know, for small towns and rural areas. You mentioned as well the way of working, and there is, and Anya alluded to this earlier, you know, COVID has, and maybe it was Elaine, COVID has changed the way we work and will work going into the future. And investment, either Indigenous or indeed coming in, you know, mightn't necessarily be in one location anymore. It could be very much spread. And that also aligns very much with the diaspora comments you made as well there, Michaela, that, you know, we bring diaspora back, that they may be from a certain part, but their business could grow right across the whole province. We see that there's and we think that that could be another part of the whole sub-regional agenda, that by the very nature of the way we've worked for the last year, you know, that the centralization of businesses going forward mightn't be as intensive in the future as they were in the past. So, but maybe Anya can maybe add something along the diaspora piece as well to that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Boyle, for asking that question about the diaspora. We're certainly seeing many more people who have moved to across North America looking for opportunities to move back home again, and that is something that we welcome. And we work very closely with our sister organisation, NI Connections, to try and get a record of those people that have expressed an interest in either moving back home or looking for maybe a new opportunity to work for a company back home. So we're trying to capture as much of that information as we can and use that. Certainly to bring back people who have gained experience overseas and then to come and set up their own business or to work for a company that is already established is absolutely valuable. And that was why my ask is, if you have people that you know are in your network that are in North America or across the United States, let us know. and we'll see what kind of opportunities we can connect with them on.
Okay, thanks for that, folks. We have 4 more indicated speakers, and then we're just going to move on to the rest of the agenda after that. So next indicated speaker is Alderman Hussey. Derek.
Thank you, Chair, for permission. I'm not a member of this committee. And can I say that I empathise fully with your opening remarks, Chair, and I wait eagerly whatever the proposal is that you're going to bring to us. And similarly with Councillor Cooper and his disappointment, perhaps maybe it's to the point of anger that the Department of the Economy cannot be with us in some way today. I mean, I would have thought with this methodology of virtual meetings that it should have been feasible for somebody from the department to have made an appearance. However, we are where we are. Michaela, Councillor Boyle has referred back to 2013. Des, you've referred back to 2012, I think it was, you referred back to. Can I refer back to 1989 and say that I'm sitting here with this feeling of deja vu? That, you know, how much further forward are we, and particularly in the Strabane end, since 1989, and indeed I would have contact before that. Anya, I very much welcomed your input that you're there, you're from the West, and you're selling the West. But, you know, and I suppose this comes to the folk back here. You're getting them over here, but, you know, are we getting them out of Belfast? And that's a common theme that we've heard nearly from all of the contributors. So, you know, the perception vis-a-vis the reality, the pessimism that can exist needs to be addressed. And I suppose first question would be, Tanya, are there any specific issues when selling the West vis-a-vis the greater Belfast area that need to be addressed? Whether it's by the department, whether it's by a investor and I or not, I'm not sure. Des, I tremendously, like Michaela, welcome the efforts that have been made reference to the Strabane Business Park. It's been a difficulty for a long time, but, you know, hopefully occupation, you know, there is occupation there, but that's going to be extended moving forward. You did mention the partnership approach and your engagement with the Chamber of Commerce. I presume that's the Derry Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
After similar engagement with Strabane Chamber of Commerce or the Strabane Bridge Project and others. And then I want to move beyond the city and Strabane town, as my colleagues probably will expect me to do. And it's the question of liaison beyond the city and Strabane town. Because the one thing that we don't want in the rural areas is for our settlements to become dormitory settlements. You referred there to the success of some industries, and one of the ones you mentioned was engineering. I'm sitting here and half a mile across the road, I can see a farmyard where a fellow started welding, and they now have one of the biggest engineering firms in Northern Ireland. So, you know, how do you liaise with those potential clients outside of the city and Strabane town, where the potential Indigenous startups may be? I would love to see a greater emphasis on those Indigenous businesses moving forward. There's a lot of hope, perhaps, in some of the stuff that we heard, but, you know, actions, not words, is what I think many of us in the chamber would now like to see, and an action, not just in the city and the town, but throughout the entire district council area. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so would Anya and Des like to respond to that?
I could maybe start, Rory, that I've been obviously doing this role since 2008, and the partners that Councillor Alderman Hussey has mentioned there, I have engaged with and will continue to engage with, and that's Strabane Chamber. The Strabane bid, probably to a lesser extent, obviously Kevin would head it up through the council, but again, more than happy to get more engaged there. And obviously Our board member, Kieran Kennedy, I believe is the chair of the bid at this stage in Strabane. So again, happy to engage with Kieran to see if there's anything else that I regionally can bring to the table there. In terms of the whole rural businesses, again, we work very closely with the council and the rural development programs that they deliver. And again, I have to say, you know, through Deirdre Hart and her team in the council, any of those businesses that in any way look as if they could export potential or been signposted through to my team, or indeed to our team in Oma, because obviously, you know, the area where Alderman Hussey works, it obviously borders into Fermanagh and Oma District Council. So again, I think the linkages are there at this stage. But if we are missing any, you know, if I'm missing any businesses at this stage who should be on our books, you know, I need to get that addressed. But I do think that the connectivity is there and the partnership linkages is there. But again, if we find that there's businesses who are falling through the stools for whatever reason, you know, I'll give you the commitment now on this call to address that.
Thanks for that, Des. So next on the case speaker is Councillor Donnelly. You all right?
Good, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. I'm a member of the committee. Thanks, Sonia, Elaine, Alan, Des. We've had a lot of fancy talking here, a lot of terminology, awful lot of buzzwords, but very little substance, very little concrete evidence of how we're going to get out of this mess. You know, we talk regarding Derry, Strabane and the surrounding area. You know, I think I can safely say, or there's others that would say, that this project has been a complete failure, and that some people would say that it's a waste of public money. When we talk about statistics, you know, this area, I represent an area that since statistics were first collated, we've tapped all the wrong tables, and there's nothing at this present moment in time that's telling us that anything is going to change anywhere soon. You know, in the past, people could blame the lack of investment through political violence and all of that. You know, we've seen the absence of political violence, and there has been absolutely, for a lot of people, for the people that I would represent, no peace dividend or none of that. There's been talk here tonight about performance, and you know, when we get out of this crisis regarding COVID and talk of Brexit, you know, look at the situation pre-COVID and you know, pre-Brexit. Nothing. Well, particularly from the people I represent, there's nothing for them to you know, when we go back to that, there's nothing there to be shouting and roaring about or holding up as just, you know, look what COVID has done or look what Brexit, as I say, because we tap all the wrong tables. There's talk here tonight about the city deal. As far as I'm concerned, we've been here before with the UK City of Culture, a lot of false promises, a lot of hyperbole, and you know, there's a perception in the communities that I represent that any benefits coming from City Deal, like any benefits, minimal benefits from the UK City of Culture, never reached working class areas like Craigan, Bogside or Brandywell. There's been talk here tonight about the diaspora. What can we do to get them back? My question, if it is a question, I know there's a lot of comments there, is that what can we do to stop people emigrating? What can we do to stop our sons and daughters and our grandchildren, you know, the brain drain, rather than talk about the diaspora coming back, which they're not. If it had any sense, they wouldn't come back. But how do we stop? How do you know, what message of hope have you got for young people in working class communities? They say to them, stay here, that they do have a future. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Donnelly. Would anybody like to take that question?
Yeah, can I just kind of start off and maybe bring Stephen in again? I think Stephen and I have had a conversation, and Stephen alluded to that earlier on, around the connection between the opportunities that the city deal has and also the additional resources that are made available, and link back to Des's comment around skills. It is around the creation of employment and then the skills base to make sure that the people in Derry are able to take advantage of that employment that is created. And I think Stephen has a very strong commitment to making sure that we commercialise the ideas, that they are driving opportunities for the creation of employment and employment across all kind of employment grades. and that's something that we share that ambition with. And maybe in terms of the city deal, it's more apt that Stephen just kind of finishes off the answer to your question.
Yeah, thanks, Cal. Thanks, Chair. I mean, this is at the heart of what we're trying to do. I mean, it's everything that we try to achieve on a regular basis. Is it easy? No. But this council has committed from day one to achieving better outcomes for our citizens, all of our citizens, all of the areas. We know the stats. We live with them, and everything we try to do. So the city deal, Councillor, you're absolutely right. If it's a high level and it's nice shiny buildings and so on, then it'll achieve none of the outcomes that we want to achieve. We desperately want to make sure that as we work our way through these projects, that everybody benefits from all ranges of society, from those who are furthest away from employment at this point in time, to the people who are aspiring to be doctors and lawyers and whatever, and all of those range of skills. So that's everything we're trying to do. Can I say today exactly what those outcomes are going to be? I can't. But all I can say is everything that we achieve in terms of within council and council officers, and everything we do with our partners, such as Invest NI, is driving towards those changing those outcomes, because that's what we know we have to do.
Thanks for that. Next indicated speaker and penultimate speaker is Alderman Ramsey. David.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Invest NI for his coming here today and giving us this report. And, you know, it's not often that I be negative. I try not to be negative as much as possible, but Councillor Gallagher is not wrong in what he has said, east-west, about the difference. Now, obviously, he went over more than about business. He went about everything. But unfortunately, he's correct. But the thing that I'm not going to let go past here tonight is the finger, you know, colleagues in council, our council, are very, very, you know, critical of Invest NI. And they do the finger pointing at Invest NI. Invest NI have a responsibility. But, you know, maybe it's time that we actually pointed the finger at the last 20 years under the SDLP and Sinn Féin, who were the leadership of the council area, Strabane and Londonderry, Derry and Strabane District Council now. And, you know, where was the investment? Where was the investment? They were at the pinnacle. Even in government, I mean, there was even the Deputy First Minister, 20 years. And Councillor Gallagher did mention it there about the fact, you know, where's the peace dividend? Where is it for the poorest in our society? The thing that I'm pointing out here is big time is, you see the DUP and the Conservative agreement. It got nothing but criticism from this council area. It was constantly lambasted. And the fact is, if it wasn't for the Conservative and DUP agreement, we wouldn't be looking at the investment we're getting at the minute. The fact is, the city deals, everything was agreed with the Conservative government whenever the DUP were in that position. The city deal was secured by the DUP late. The city deal's late. We know it's late. But it's here now. So what I want to see is prosperity going forward, and it's going to happen. But I'm telling you, see this pointing the finger at Invest NI. You know, let's point the finger at the political leadership of the last 20 years. But I look forward to working with that political leadership going forward because of the city deal. The city deal is there. Let's get stuck into it. And as Invest NI says, working with us to do more. They're there for the taking. And the money is going to be there now. So let's move forward now and get on with it, because we will have prosperity for our council area. Positive, that's what we need. And thank you to Councillor Gallagher for making it clear and telling the facts that there is a massive east-west split. But hopefully the Conservative DUP agreement will change that, even down to broadband and all the rest of it, business, innovation, everything. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks for that, David. Glad to see you're now cheerleaders again for the Conservatives. So last but not least, Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Chair. And you get on there before me just to say that. It's nice to hear the DUP and Conservative Party are hand in glove again. Sure it'll not last long, never does. Look, you know, I missed out on some of the earlier contributions because I had another thing on. But it seems that people have, you know, hit the nail on the head a few times. I suppose I have a number of points. One is, and I always go back to this, and nobody ever seems to have an answer about it. You know, people have gone back in time. I want to go back to 2009, because that's the last time that we had a public review of economic policy. It's the only one we have. It still refers to the economy in the sense that we were in 2009 when there was an economic crisis right across the developed world. And the Economic Advisory Group at that time made recommendations to the then Derry Minister, who is Alderman Ramsey's party leader, to basically say in writing, and we have the letters, I've put them out there over many a time, that sub-regional economic growth was not only not a good idea, it should be ruled out altogether. And that is why Derry is lagging behind, because it's policy. And we hear every week, and I'm glad that David raised it, about political leadership. Stormont has been up and running off and on now for most young people's lifetime. But these policies, these fundamental policies, never change. When I've been calling for a review of economic policy since about 2013, and Desmond, we've discussed this I don't know how many times, because the fact of the matter is, economic policy is set by the executive. If that executive takes the advice, and it has done over many years, that sub-regional growth is not a priority, then it's not a priority, and that answers a lot of the questions that that other speakers have spoken to. Why, whenever we had a deputy first minister, why, whenever we had a finance minister from this city, and plenty of MLAs, has things never changed? It's never changed because the policy has never changed. That is what the executive operate on, and that's why it gets on my nerves when we hear about these fantastic political parties and their super duper ministers up in Belfast, because not one of them has tried to change economic policy in terms of sub-regional growth since 2009, but they don't want to talk about that, and that's fair enough. I'm with Gary as well. It comes to the point where it's hard not to be. I don't think it's negative. I think it's realist when we come to the point about Derry's economy, because one of the big things that I have a concern about when we talk about city deals is that we have been here before. It was the one plan in my day, and it was a shambles. It was an absolute shambles. It was an opportunity for people to put out press statements to say that everything was going to be great. But there's still people sitting, and I'm not besmirching people who work in call centres. I've worked on them myself, who have master's degrees. People who are doing PhDs, working up a town in a shop at the weekend. It's a complete mismatch of skills, and until we get that massive change with regards to economic policy, I can't see that changing, and that's a responsibility of those who have the numbers in the executive. But I suppose as well, Des, and we've spoken about this over many years as well, is the idea of agglomeration. We talk about, and we're going to be talking about it throughout this meeting, about selling Derry. But the one thing I never see is, I would love for someone to tell me from an economic perspective, in one line, what do we sell Derry as? Because we're talking at the minute about the city deal and about the research, the robotics, We've got so many businesses now that are working at the top end of financial services, software. But Derry, if there's a blank there for me, Derry is the city of what? Are we the city of low paid jobs? Are we the city of no prospects? Or are we the city of innovation, for example? And all of that mismatch is not there. And when we come to talking about agglomeration, I don't know why that has never been picked up. Why there are some serious contenders, when we look at software, we look at financial services that have created that presence in the city, and that has grown, software 10 years ago. But we never actually say to anybody that Derry is the home of software. It's the home of whatever it is. And that's, I suppose that comes down to how you sell Derry across the world, because there's just no coordination that I can see. And that's not a criticism of Invest NI, because again, you have to work within the policy that's set. And it is not surprising that the Department for the Economy didn't send anybody. But it's all right, because no doubt that at another meeting we'll be told how great people's ministers are. So I'd like maybe to hear from you, Des, about the agglomeration. But also, are you aware, have you as Invest NI or Alan ever been told, listen, the principle of sub-economic growth is a go, get out there and don't worry about promoting, the North as one economic unit. Get out there and promote it as 11 economic units, because we can't compete with Belfast right now. So if you're selling the North, the only place that investors can see is Belfast. But if you promote Derry and Strabane as and the city region as the big fish in a smaller pond, of course we're going to get more investment. And that comes down to the policy. So I'd be interested to hear about that, Des. And look, thanks for coming on. I know we've spoken about this before, and where David is right in one thing is you do get a lot of stick. But when people dig down, you'll see it's a policy that is being followed as your public servants as much as we are. And until that policy changes, it's not really your fault.
Thanks for that. Emmett, would Des or Alan like to come in on that?
You're muted, Des.
You're on mute, Des.
Apologies for that. We sell Derry on talent, competitive costs, and lifestyle. Those are the three main areas we sell Derry on. If there are other things we can add to that, we will. And and Anya alluded to this earlier. We need to ensure that the proposition that we have for Derry, we do promote the whole of Northern Ireland. That's what we do, and the reasons for it, Anya alluded to earlier. She's competing in a really congested space there. On Manhattan Island alone, there's over 100 economic development agencies on that island alone, and we're one of them. So even to get investors to the shores, irrespective of even getting to a council area, is a challenge in itself. And I'm sure Anya will back me up on what I've just said. But it is very much, the proposition is based on talent, cost competitiveness, and lifestyle. Those are the three main areas. And obviously what we offer in terms of support comes behind that, as that, incentive for them to come here, because again, we are competing with, those $100 agencies or whatever. The shop window in terms of what we sell, and I've been doing the regional manager role since 2008, has got substantially stronger in Derry and Strabane than it was in 2008. And that's even at the time of the economic downturn and the crash in 2008 and 2010 and the recovery that was required there. The City of Culture, I thought was, what it did was give the city and region a confidence that I think was lacking before, because all of a sudden this huge opportunity presented itself, and some of the things that was delivered that year and the feel-good factor that it gave to the city, I don't think you can put a value in that, Councillor Doyle. But you're right, we have spoken about this over the years, but I do see positivities. I recognize the challenges, but I have seen a city and region that is different to what it was in 2008. And that's not just the city, that's also Strabane. You know, I'm driving from Sion Mills now, and I'm coming into seeing Strabane Business Park with, yes, it's only 2 tenants at this stage, but it is 2. It's more than it was 4 years ago. And I can see now, and fingers crossed, we do get, you know, the inquiries now over the line in terms of, you know, those people moving in as tenants. All of a sudden, I'm starting to see an infrastructure there that as an investor drives in, an Indigenous investor as well as an international investor, and sees activity, sees, you know, the businesses that are there at the moment, the Dragon Foods, you know, the KES in Strabane, and all of a sudden it's O'Neill's and S. McColgan's. And the first impression you get, there's industry going on here. And we need that to help us sell the region. And similarly in Derry, you know, on the slide that Anya had earlier, you look at some of those companies that are there. Yes, Seagate's been there a hell of a long time, but there are a lot of businesses who are on that, you know, in terms of what we've brought in that weren't in the city area, you know, in 2008, 2009. So, and that's a shop window that our colleagues internationally can sell, because they can say that not only have other international companies, be it in financial services, business services, software, not only have they come here, but they've stayed here and they've reinvested here. You know, and that to other investors, you know, is as much as the incentives that we could possibly bring to the table. But, you know, I'll go back to earlier, the whole thing about the skills and the need for that skills match is as important, because that is the key message we have in terms of how we sell this place, and it is based on talent. I don't know, Alan, if you want to add to that.
No, Des, I think that's a very strong message around how we are selling dairy out in the global market. And I think if Councillor Doyle believes there are changes that need to be made to the kind of the message or the proposition, then I think that's one that we need to speak with Stephen about. But I think there is a very strong message out there. I think Kevin O'Connor Hinks on the call, very, very quick to remind us, and we've been using this since, around Derry being, I think, the 4th best place to work remotely. And again, that's another key selling point that links back to the quality of the lifestyle, the quality of education, and the quality of the environment in which the city is based. So these are very strong selling tools for us.
Thanks for that, Des and Alan. So that's us. I know it's been virtually 2 hours, but it was a really worthwhile discussion. And I appreciate, you know, your honesty and your openness about the issues that this region faces. So I would just like to thank you. So thank you, Des. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Anya. So thanks very much. We're going to move on to the remainder of the meeting here.
Okay.
So next item on the agenda is Chair's business. I have a few issues I want to raise, and obviously one of them has arisen out of this delegation. So there's widespread disappointment and dismay that a representative from the Economy Department wasn't here to present to this committee. I think the clear message coming from the Invest NI delegation was specifically around my question about sub-regional targets, was that this is a political issue. Invest NI don't set the policy that they need to adhere to. They can't decide whether or not investment happens on a sub-regional basis. You know, the person that can decide on that is Diane Dodds, the Economy Minister. And it would have been really helpful if a member of her department were actually here today. So I've got a proposal. I'm going to put it in the chat box here. So it's Council calls on the Economy Minister to introduce sub-regional targets for job creation, economic activity, wage levels, and investor visits in Derry and Strabane, and invites the Economy Minister to present to Council on this pressing issue. Councillor Cusack has seconded.
Deputy Chair. Second, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Shauna. Councillor Doyle would like to comment. Emmett?
Here's Rory. Look, it goes back to what I said. You know, I have no issue with your proposal, but this is a policy. You know, if you were willing, I don't want to put an amendment to it. I don't want to make it an issue, but I think as well we should be making reference to the fact that we haven't had a review of economic strategy since 2009, and therefore we're working on old principles. You know, I don't know if anybody's ever had a chance to read it, but you know, it still talks about you know, the economic crash. It still talks about banks, for example, that haven't been around in a decade and over, and economic principles such as, you know, lowering corporation tax, which you know, the lead partners of the executive were quite partial to at that time. So I would hope that maybe we could include that, because for many years, you know, working with you know, working in Stormont alongside Pat in a former life, this was always the one thing that people, it was almost like an open secret. You know, every time we spoke to Invest NI, and that's how I got to know Des, was, listen, we have a framework that we have to work on. It's to promote the whole of the North, and that's the end of it. So I would welcome your thoughts, Chair, about maybe just including a call for an updated review of economic policy, because I think that's where we'll get to the crux of why it's okay just to promote the North as one economic unit. Thanks.
Well, Emmett, I'm happy for you to submit an amendment, and we will vote in support of that. You know, that's not a problem. Councillor Cooper, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Chair. Again, the spirit of the proposal, no issue with, and the proposed amendment. Just, I mean, Councillor Doyle keeps referring to the executive and all of this and economic policy. The Department for the Economy is a sponsored department, and he must have started a meeting. He says he was away somewhere else. He's a member of this committee. If he's that concerned about economic development, attend a full meeting will be a good starter for 10. But what I said at the start of this, and he probably missed it because he wasn't here, is that when it comes to the Department for Finance, there was a dedicated approach in terms of city deal, making sure the money was released, and DFC are having a very targeted approach to interim labour market in terms of those furthers from the market, specifically for the Northwest. And that's all part of the idea that there is a sub-regional approach from departments across the executive, not just from DFE. But DFE, it's in their remit specifically to deal with both the wider economic strategy, and he's right in terms of saying it's outdated, but also in terms of the sub-regional idea. And what I would say to Councillor Farrell is good luck with a proposal. I don't expect the Minister to be coming here to account for herself. And I heard Councillor Ramsey coming on, or Alderman Ramsey coming on and defending her and around you know, the deal with the Conservatives and all of that, and money was made available through that. But we still go back to the fact when it comes to the figures, we're still lagging behind, and the primary focus, the primary remit in terms of departments and the executive is DFE, and there's no confidence in my perspective. When I said this at the start, when I lamented the fact that the DFE policy unit weren't here, but I said it was no surprise, and I think that's because the Minister made sure they weren't here, to be blunt. And until we get into the next remit in terms of the next mandates, in terms of the Assembly, we'll still be having these discussions over and over again. It's not INI's fault, and in many ways it's the department's fault, because they're not changing that policy. So no issue with it being included, but the idea that the Minister will come before us is it's a hopeful proposal. Hopefully it'll happen. I just don't see it, but we're happy to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Doyle has sort of tweaked that amendment. So whoever, is it Jill? If you can just amend that. Would anybody else like to speak on this item? There's no dissenting voices. So, well, on behalf of the SDLP are happy to support the amendment and obviously the substantive proposal. Sinn Féin the same, Alliance the same. DUP, would you like to comment? Are you happy enough? UUP, fine.
Happy enough.
Cheers, Alderman Ramsey. So I think that's unanimous. So that is carried. And to Councillor Cooper, we are asking Diane Dodds to come. It's up to her whether she comes or not, but we'll let her decide on that. All we can do is request it. In terms of another couple of items in Chair's business, at last month's meeting, we had Jared Doherty from River Radio here in attendance. And he spoke about his hopes and dreams for the future in terms of a DAB license. And I was over the moon to see that organisation were awarded the license. I'm not saying it was because of their attendance at this meeting, but it's good news nonetheless. So I propose that this committee sends a letter to River Radio just to congratulate them and to offer any further support that they need with future plans. See, Alderman Guy has seconded that. Is everybody okay with that proposal? I don't see any dissenting voices. DUP in agreement? I will take that as unanimous as well. At full council 2 weeks ago, there was a response from the Arts Council regarding the £619,000 flagship funding for 4 Belfast organisations. I know we were having a very long meeting, and I said I was going to raise it in Chair's business or have it as an item at this committee. And the responses is that the Arts Council are willing to engage with Council. And I would suggest that we do that. Some of the figures in terms of funding are quite eye-watering, I would say, some of the 4 Belfast organisations. And I don't want to get into a situation where they write to us, we respond, then we send another response, and it's this tit for tat. I'd rather we just speak to them face to face and ask them just to get a rundown on whatever is happening. So I would suggest that we take the Arts Council up on their offer of meeting us. I know there was councillors on this committee that were happy to engage with the local cultural sector. And I would extend that invitation to all of those councillors. But I think it's important that we also include the cultural partners as well. Councillor Cooper, would you like to come in on that?
Chair, just in terms of the avoid duplication on this, because as you rightly say, councillors were engaged with the sector, and then there was follow-up meetings with MLAs, and ultimately a meeting between the DFC minister and the sector just in the last couple of weeks, and elected reps attending that as well. Now there's follow-up to come back from that, and one of those follow-ups, as far as I'm led to believe, and I'm very clear in my mind, one of those follow-ups is that the Arts Council will be coming back to the sector, and that when that meeting is convened, that item you've referred to will be part of the agenda, as well as the wider Arts Council policy to the Northwest. So, I mean, you're putting a request in, but it's already been actioned. The point is, do we need to do it, because that's a meeting I'm expecting will be happening sooner rather than later, not just with DFC, but also with some of the department officials that deal with the arts and culture sector as well, and dealing with developing a new strategy for the sector, because that's something that is missing at the minute as well. So my understanding is that that's ongoing, and the minister was going away to start to get those meetings arranged through officials. So I was expecting progress report on that in the next few weeks. So it's already happening as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I see that the proposal is seconded by Councillor Doyle, and there's agreement from the DUP. My proposal is that we meet the Arts Council and we invite local cultural partners. I'm not sure what was agreed at the meeting with the DFC minister, but Aidan, could you shed any light on this? Have you any clarity on the situation?
Yeah, so I suppose officers didn't attend. That was a meeting directly between the sector and obviously the political representation, and I know some of the members on the call were at that meeting. So I suppose that's an issue that's been followed up directly by the DFC minister. My understanding is to pick up with the Arts Council and also to look at some of the wider issues of strategy that Councillor Cooper has referred to. I'm assuming your comments, Chair, relate to the correspondence that we've received directly from the Arts Council in relation to funding, where they have extended the invitation to meet with members and the sector. So I suppose they're probably, some of the issues will overlap, I would imagine, but they're probably two separate processes, I understand. So as an officer team, we're happy to facilitate whatever members would like in terms of your request for that.
Thanks, Aidan. Well, I'm making a proposal, and I've made a proposal that we meet with the Arts Council and that cultural partners from across the city and district are invited. I see that Councillor or Alderman Wark wants to also invite the minister. Would you like to speak to that, Alderman Wark?
I honestly think the minister should be coming down here. Obviously, it was a major issue with arts in the northwest. We feel everything is going to Belfast. It was obviously a hot topic with yourself, and I feel the minister, along with Arts Council, should come down and explain to this council on that. And I would like to amend that, or put that amendment on to your proposal, Chair.
I'll second that, Chair. Councillor Ramsey.
Right, okay. I wouldn't be against the idea, but one thing that I remember when I raised this back in November, an output was that we wrote to the minister and we wrote to the Arts Council. The ministerial response was that basically Arts Council have administered this funding. We'll let them respond to you. I have no disagreement with inviting the minister as well, but I'm not sure if there's time in our diary for that. I couldn't possibly comment. I wouldn't be against inviting the minister. Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Chair. So we're back in ministerial ping pong then. Diane Dodds couldn't come down, and we'll take a dig at her, but now we'll take a dig at the DFC minister instead. Look, I think we should have two different proposals. Yours, which I'm happy to second, and if the DUP want to put forward a proposal to invite the minister, let's do them separately. And for no other reason than I don't care who comes down the road, but we need answers on behalf of the people we serve. People want a grandstand, that's dead on. And do you know what? I was going to say nothing about it, but for Councillor Cooper, when he mentioned earlier, if I cared about the economy, I would have been here on time. I have a lot of constituency cases, Mickey, because people trust us to work on their behalf. So it's none of your business what I do when I'm not at this.
So have I, Councillor Doyle, but I'm still at this committee.
Because well, that's all right, because you're able to come on here. The meetings lit plenty of times, but all your wee buddies in your the council group will back.
Show me once, Emmett. You show me
Don't
once.
be thinking here that you can tell me that you can tell me when I can and can't come to meetings.
Please. Thank you. I'm not sure what we do with this. Alderman Wark, do you want to invite the minister to a separate meeting?
The separate meeting, want them down. Obviously, they're not travelling down here, so I'll be Zoom at the minute. I would like to have the Arts Council and the minister at that meeting. I feel it would be more important to do it.
Well, On behalf of the SDLP, I'm happy enough to invite the Minister as well. I'm happy enough with that. If she can't attend, she can send somebody of that is involved at that level. Councillor or Alderman Hussey.
Yeah, I'm not a member of committee, Chair, but I'm minded that, you know, if you're trying to tie the two together, you could be pushing the meeting further down the road on availability. You know, that's the only issue I have. Certainly, if the Minister can come dead on, but I'm mindful that the A2N5, the A5N2 meeting has been pushed back because a Minister was not available. So, you know, whoever you can get there first to deal with the situation is the way to go. Thank you, Chair.
I think we proceed with inviting the Arts Council and then extending an invite to the Minister or somebody that she would like to nominate to attend. Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Chair. No, I think you're right, and in fairness, Mickey's put it in the chat there about making sure an official can be made available. So even if we, you know, I'm happy to take up that. I think it's the main thing is if we get the Arts Council down, if the Minister's available, I'm sure she can go, like Mickey says, and you know, if we have to deal with an official, that's just as good. But let's get to the crux of the issue. So again, I've seconded the motion.
Right. So is everybody happy enough, or as happy as they can be in terms of that? Right. My final item in Chair's business. Obviously, we've had movement with the heads of terms agreement for the city deal, and a key aspect of the city deal is enhancing our tourism offer. And a key element of that is the development of the Maritime Museum. So I'd like to ask the Director, Stephen Gillespie, to give us an update on that, if possible. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as members know, this project's been on the certainly the radar of this committee for a number of years. As long as I've been in council, I think. But and we've regularly brought updates and brought members through the process of where we are. So as a result, obviously, of heads of terms being signed, the DNA is firmly established in there as a project. We've also been working with political representatives and the Minister of Finance and his officials to try to decouple the various projects, because obviously DNA and other projects such as the Northern Ireland or the Graduate Entry Medical School are all well advanced of some of the other projects that are a bit more at this stage. They're very high level in terms of the strategic outline cases. So that thankfully has been agreed by officials in the Department of Finance, and that instruction has gone out through the various departments. So that has allowed the Department for the Economy, which will be the sponsored department for DNA, to look very seriously at the proposal, to agree to be that sponsored department, which is a significant movement. And now what we need to do is just agree that timetable of how we move this project forward while we're working on all the outline or the outline business cases for all the other projects. So it's really good news. It's great for us as officials working on this project. What we need to do now is just work through the exact timetable of funding with the other departments, such as the Executive Office and Department for the Communities, and then come back to members with a very detailed paper as to exactly where we are and the time frame to take that through over the coming months. But it's something that we now see an end to, or an end to where we can physically start the project, which is really good news. So I just wanted to update members on that now, and then as I say, probably too soon for April, but definitely in May we'll bring through a very detailed paper as to exactly where the project is and where it sits with the funding. So thank you.
Thanks for that update, Stephen, and I look forward to seeing the detailed paper. Councillor Cooper, would you like to come on?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Stephen for the update, which I know myself and Martina have been meeting with Stephen and Tourism NI and the departments on a number of occasions over the last few months to try and get this over the line. When I say the department, initially the Department for Finance, to try and make sure there was flexibility in the city deal funding that would allow the money to be drawn down because of the original idea was that the 15-year timescale of study deal funding. The fear was it would have to be drawn down later in chronological terms, but because of the flexibility the finance minister showed in response to correspondence that we'd submitted to him in a lobby from Martin Anderson, he was able to say that the money will be available sooner rather than later, and that is why the DNA project was announced at the study deal launch last week at the heads of terms. But we needed a sponsor department to take on the idea of actually project managing this, and that's why DFE were key in that regard, and the fact that they've now agreed to come forward and be the project management lead on this is the last piece of the jigsaw in many ways in terms of getting this ready. They move the construction stage and implementation stage. We're going to continue working with DFC and the executive office as well, who've also agreed to provide support, and obviously HLF, to make sure that this is all coordinated as much as possible. But I'm absolutely delighted. This has been months and months of work behind the scenes. So the fact we've got to this stage now is massive, because this will be a game changer in terms of providing us with a state-of-the-art modern civic museum that will have that strong maritime theme. So it's good news. It's an early indication of what study deal monies can do, and it's actually going to create jobs and create more tourism footfall. So I'm absolutely delighted, as is Martina, and we look forward to moving this on in the coming months. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Michael. Councillor Barr, Raymond.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, has there been any developments since the last council meeting in relation to Milltown Grammar School?
Happy to take that, Chair, if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the Milltown Grammar School, the proposal went through, the motion went through council. We've got an internal meeting because it'll cross all the various departments of council. It's not just business and culture, not just tourism. It'll cross regeneration with the parks and the regeneration side. It'll cross health and communities in terms of potential sports provision, etc. So the chief executive is leading on pulling that internal group together. From there, then we start to work on the obviously the process from there. But as Councillor Barr would I'm sure fully appreciate, it's a very lengthy process to start to express your interest. You've got to develop your feasibility studies, all the various processes have to go through. But that work has started, and we will keep the various committees updated as we work our way through it.
That's fine, Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Stephen. So that's Chair's business adequately covered. So item 7 is matters arising from our previous meeting. Has anybody anything they would like to raise? Councillor Doyle. Emmett.
Thanks, Roy. I put that number in there wrong. Sorry, it was BC 3221 Festival and Event Strategy. I suppose it may be possible to get an update from meeting. We had mentioned that I'd mentioned the last time that it was really important for us to prioritize local talent when we're using, when we're having festivals and events, particularly around music events. And I know there was a group set up of officers to discuss it. I'd also raised it at audit assurance and risk. And I think at that point, because that was one of the issues, I think at that point, when I raised it with Denise, they were happy enough from an audit perspective that we could do some sort of prioritization. So I'm just wondering if we can get an update maybe from Aidan on that, please. Thank you.
So that issue was discussed at the members' working group last week, which I believe. And so I mean, a full update was given by our colleagues at Audit Insurance in relation to what we could, and more pertinently, I suppose, what we couldn't do in relation to prioritising within our tender calls and within our requests for quotations around prioritising local acts and artists. It's very difficult for us to do. We made a number of points in relation to the fact that to have that sort of a policy would, if to put it simply, as we discussed in the meeting, if other councils were to adopt a similar policy, it would exclude our own artists from bidding for work elsewhere. And we discussed a lot of the work that we do to support local cultural providers right across the board to be able to to respond to tender calls that we have, and to support them, I suppose, in those that they might want to bid for elsewhere. So I know that you were on that call, and you know, I suppose that's really the update. That's where we're at. We do a lot of work to support. And I think one of the actions that came out of that group was that we were going to look at some specific training, which we will look at. And I mean, that's where we will work with our colleagues in the business team. And we would expect to do that, to roll out, I suppose, some more of that support for local artists. We did discuss, I suppose, as you'll be aware, that we don't have particular concerns around the level of local artists that are responding to our calls. You know, there's obviously the odd one that miss out, and I suppose the majority of issues we have tend to be that people miss out to other people within our council area. But we have you know, it's not something that we have significant concerns about. And what we did say, what I would say to any member, if they're approached by anybody, we will gladly speak to anybody who is looking for general advice about how to respond. We do, you know, we roll out a number of training issues, and we're happy to talk to anybody. Obviously, we can't once the tender process is live, but we're happy to speak to anybody generally. And obviously, our colleagues in audit assurance are the same. If anybody's looking for additional advice or support in relation to our tender and our quotation process, we're happy to do that.
Thanks for that, Aideen. Are you happy enough with that, Councillor Doyle? Cheers. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Durkin. Mary?
Thank you, Chair. Just BC 3121. Under that item, the Columba centenary celebrations came up, and Aideen did say that a paper would come forward. I just wonder if there's progress in that, Aideen. Thanks.
It's coming in April, Councillor Durkin. Yeah, we're just working on it. Obviously with the officers employed at Donegal County Council, but I'm working with her on that report, so it is coming in April.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mary, and thanks for that, Aideen. So there's no other items in matters arising. So item 8 on the agenda is the national events, and that's Aideen McCarter.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, the purpose of this report is to secure your approval for the allocation of funding for the National Events Fund for 21 and 22. Members, you will know that this is a specific fund that we hold for applicants for events that have that are of significant international importance, that will generate significant international media coverage. Previous recipients have been events such as the Ulster Rally and the All Ireland Cycling Championships. So we've had an event, we've one event submitted for the coming year. It is the same event that was submitted, and a report was brought into this committee about the early part of last year. These events must have total visitor numbers greater than 5,000 and an overall budget of 100,000 or more, and we're happy to consider funding requests between 10 and 50,000, although we only have a budget of 35,000 for this generally per annum. So members, we've assessed, and the scoring assessment is outlined in the report, and the recommendation is that with the limited budget based on the score of 80, that we would make a provisional letter of offer to this event for a limited budget of £35,000. I should point out that the organisers are hopeful that this will go ahead, but clearly it is not confirmed, and it will only go, it'll only go ahead if restrictions allow it. And we would only be proposing that we would issue a letter of offer to this event, and we would pay any money out basically if this event goes ahead. So we're working with the organisers on that, but we felt it was prudent to assess the application and to bring it to you for approval. It's also worth noting as well, members, that you'll be aware that our current round of annual grant aid is under assessment, and we expect to bring a full report on the results of that for your approval in April.
Thanks for that, Aileen. First indicated speaker is Councillor Boyle. Michaela?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Irene. I suppose just to say we're going to remain very hopeful and positive that this event will go ahead. Obviously, coming out of the COVID and the exit strategy, and hopefully we'll hear soon from the executive that these type of events may be able to go ahead in the not so distant future. I suppose just to say any major event of this international media event to this size and capacity would be a great boost to our area, wherever it is held or whatever it is, particularly in the northwest region area, and hopefully the rural areas will have a benefit of that, whatever it is. So happy to propose the provisional letter of offer at this stage, and hopefully that it will happen. And we wish whatever sporting event that it is the very best, and we want to get back to that kind of environment where we will be able to go out and enjoy our sporting events right across the board. So thanks, Aileen.
Thanks for that, Michaela. So you've proposed it. Councillor Doyle has seconded in the chat box, and Alderman Hussey has a question. Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Can I endorse Councillor Michaela Boyle's comments there, particularly the basis you'll understand that the event can or has the potential to spread benefit throughout the district council area. I noticed in 2.5 that the event had previously been successful. I'm presuming that because the event was cancelled, they didn't actually draw down any funds the previous time that they were successful. I'm presuming that's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think Aileen
That's
is
correct.
indicating with her head movements that you're right, Derek. So we're okay there. So that's item 8 done. Item 9 is the digital transformation programme, and we've got Kevin O'Connor to present that item. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, members, for letting me in. The purpose of this report is to seek your approval for the progression of an 11 council collaborative application to invest NI for the delivery of a digital transformation business support programme. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion at today's committee around the various different types of support that exist to foster innovation and build our business and SME sectors. This programme has come about as a direct result of the COVID pandemic, in that back probably in early summer, Invest NI were approached around what they could do to support the councils in relation to providing support basically for our businesses who were really impacted from a trading perspective, to help them what they could do to help businesses diversify, and how could they support councils. So Invest NI engaged with the 11 councils through the Economic Development Officers Group over a period of probably 4 or 5 months, and out of that engagement came the idea to look at tapping into the ERDF funding, which, as members will be aware and will know, is due to finish up in 2023. The programme itself that they have come up with and council officers have collaborated on is around digital transformation. It's around helping to drive digital inclination amongst the target market. It's looking at trying to build advanced digital technologies, look at help companies develop digital acceleration plans. All of the details are highlighted in the report itself. From a Derry City and Strabane District Council perspective, it's an 11 council programme. It'll be divided equally in terms of the support that's given across each council area. So that will equate to a minimum of 18 businesses getting support within this council area. What I would say is that we have, through the officers group, said that if other councils don't meet their quota, then we will be able to bid in to try to get additional support for this area. You will know that our track record in terms of delivering these programs, we generally max them out, and we have maxed out our own ERDF allocation in this current round of funding. So the contribution to the overall project cost from our perspective is just over 31,000. The details around the total project costs are highlighted there, and the recommendation is to seek your approval to proceed with the collaborative funding application. And should we be successful to make a contribution of 31,000 towards total project costs.
Thanks for that, Kevin. I've got one indicated speaker on this item. That's Councillor Mellon. Aileen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kevin, for the report. I just want to welcome it and propose the recommendation that we do move forward. It's refreshing to see such a positive collaborative approach. And I think now more than ever, this type of moving forward and helping small businesses move into the digital world and build their capacity and be able to compete online is really important. I know I have been in touch with a small business owner here in the Ballyarnett area who has availed of a program like this throughout the COVID period, and they were able to bring their business online with the help and support that they were given. They build social media presence, they build their generation or their generated income through them kind of platforms, whether it was web-based or how they design or market or brand their business online. So we have already seen success coming from these models. So it is to be welcomed for businesses within there. I do hope that 18 is a baseline and that this model grows. And we see businesses having the capacity and support to be able to compete with the online sellers, and that they can be transformable and be able to still be proactive and positive and bringing in an income from them for themselves and the families that obviously depend on that as well. I would also like to commend the people of the city and district. Throughout COVID, we have seen people coming onto social media using whatever tools that they have, be it little or a lot. They try and move and transform whatever they could to still stay positive and progressive within their businesses. So seeing councils come alongside that and be able to use the skills that we have within council to help them develop and nurture their plans and their business plans and how they go forward is to be welcome. So thank you again, Kevin, and I'm sure there'll be an immediate uptick. I'm sure there's people ready and waiting for it to go live. So well done, and thank you again for the report.
Thanks for that, Aileen. I see Councillor Doyle has seconded in the chat box. So that is open for decision. Finished. I'm going to take open for information items 10, 11, 12 and 13 as read, and Councillor Doyle would like to comment on item 10. Emmett?
Thanks, Chair. It was just under the marketing campaigns for there's two things: business and culture. I know that there was a website that that the council had up, and there was talks about it from private partners about putting a website up that would allow local businesses specifically to sell their wares, particularly smaller businesses. So we'd just be interested, just as a point of input, to see if we could input that into this marketing plan. And under the arts and culture aspect of it, obviously when we're talking about selling the city, I'd like to see just that the People's Gallery and the Bogsides included in any marketing that we're doing. Just wanted to have those inputs. Thanks.
Aileen, would you like to come on that?
Yeah, no, happy to note that. And yeah, so we can come. I suppose we have the Shop Local Derry Strabane website, so I can look and send Councillor Doyle an update on that.
All right. Cheers, Aileen. Thanks very much. Councillor Boyle would like to come on item 11. Michaela?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, and it's just to, I suppose, it's on the Strabane bid, and just to welcome the uptake in the card sales They've almost over doubled within the last year, and I think it's probably to do with the COVID pandemic and people shopping locally. So well done to everybody in the Strabane bid for that, for promoting that. And I just see the gift card has been given the opportunity now to, would be coming to its expiry date, but they have the card scheme now has got an extra year. So, and I just want to also say, well done to Strabane Bid's Facebook page. It's a fantastic page, and there's a lot of work. You can see a lot of detail and work that's gone into it. And to thank everybody just on the team. I know they had their recent AGM recently, and thank them for the work that they're doing right across the Strabane town. And also to welcome the extra money from the People's Minister, Minister Hargy, for the additional financial support, and of course Strabane getting the extra 5,000 to continue on with their work. So well done just to the Strabane bid. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Boyle, and thanks for letting us know of Derry Hargy's new title. So Alderman Hussey, would you like to comment on one of those items?
Yeah, item 10, Chair. Under point 3, city and district dressing. I noticed in the second paragraph that it says officers have identified opportunities to enhance and grow the existing schemes and are working on including additional sites in the following areas. All of those areas are city and town. Where is the district dressing that's referred to in the title?
Aileen, would you like to come on that?
Yeah, happy to. I suppose the city and district refers to the city and town. Yeah, that has always traditionally been the focus of the dressing. It is city and town dressing, but I suppose it's the city and district council, which is why the reference here is to city and district. But yeah, so the locations, yeah, are predominantly city and town.
Chair, just to briefly come back, obviously I expressed disappointment for those rural settlements where there are businesses, etc., that they can't avail of the particular programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Alderman Hussey. So that is the open agenda finished. Can I get a proposer and seconder for moving on the confidential, please?
Proposed, Darren.
Thanks, Alderman Guy. Seconder?
Happy to second there, Rachel.
All right. Cheers, Councillor Ferguson. Can somebody indicate that we are now not live streaming?